Hello, if you want to watch exclusive lemon content on What If Naruto, then go to my Boosty. The first link in the description here contains such hot stories for adults, such as What If Naruto was a daddy for Sarada, or Kushina and Mikoto Vulgar Naruto mommies. Follow the link and enjoy. I'm waiting for you.
Genhetsuzuki clenched his fist. The second Mizukage was not a happy man these days. It was due to multiple reasons, the most important of them being the fact that I was losing a war. His people were on his back, unable to fight the combined power of the earth and the earth of the lightning. The second ninja war had started with great promise for Kiri, but like other great nations, she had also suffered due to the chaos. The second Hokage was dead. This was the second Raikage. However, both Konoha and Kumo had many shinobi, able to fight despite the fall of their leaders. Both nations had large armies that they were ruthlessly using to carve each other out. Meanwhile, Kiri was locked in a dual war against Kumo Iwa. It had been only 2 months since the war started, and already thousands of shinobi were dead, at least 1,000 from Kiri's own lands. The death toll not only included the ordinary ranks of shinobi, but also Ambu, a terrace ninja, and even most of the 7 great swordsmen. Genjutsu cursed his own little rivalry with the second Tsuchikage that made him make decisions. Impulsive actions that led to the deaths of 4 of his 7 great ninja swordsmen at the hands of Mu and his student Onoki. Now, Kiri was on the back with his strength dwindling and shinobi morale collapsing, as news of 4 of his strongest falling into enemy hands reached the masses. But Genjutsu was not one to give up so easily. Despite the losses, he knew that Kiri had many skilled fighters in his ranks. Men and women ready to fight for their homeland and honor their fallen comrades. It was from them that he had already chosen 3 of the 4 vacant positions in the ranks. From the swordsman's 7 ninja, a woman from the body of hunters who would now wield Uibari, sewing needle. Her ice release and sharp instincts would make her the new perfect sword master now that its former wielder was killed. He had chosen 2 of his most powerful and dangerous hounen to handle. Jarsamita, Sharkskin, and Kubikibicho, Executioner Blade, their violent nature and monstrous power would serve them well to handle those dangerous swords. Amayuri Ringo still faithfully served him as the master of the twin blades going, Fangs. While Mayatsuzuki, his own son and heir, managed Kabuchiwari, the Met Splitter. Genjutsu knew that his son had potential to not only lead the Ozuki clan in the future, but also Kiri with his power and cunning. Jinpachi Munasi had survived his battle against the Tsuchikage with his Shibuki sword, Splash, and was anxious for blowing his enemies to oblivion despite the injuries he suffered. Unfortunately, the last of the sacred blades and the Mecha-Ray was destroyed along with his master when he fell in the battle against Mu, the second Tsuchikage. The loss of the swordsman was a heavy blow, but the destruction of 1 of the 7 blades, Holy Chillas, was an unforgivable sin, for which the people of Kiri would make Iba repent in blood. Undeterred, Genjutsu had ordered the creation of a new sword. To make his mark on history, he decided to create twin swords, but while Kiva, Fangs, allowed his master power about lightning and destruction, he wanted these new blades to be the embodiment of his own anger, which was fast and brutal. His blacksmiths had outdone themselves and prepared a dangerous weapon. Now, the Mizukage had to find the most suitable one to handle them. Learning from his mistakes, the second Mizukage had chosen his greatest swordsman not only for his power, but also for his personality. He looked to his sides and observed the 6 dangerous swordsmen staring at the sand below them with different expressions on their faces. Zabuza, Kisame, Jinpachi, and Amayuri were excited about the fights that were happening. The 4 of them were the fiercest among the group and strike fear into the hearts of the enemy when they stepped on the battlefield. While Aku and Manhetsu did not betray any of their feelings and impassively watched the battles taking place beneath them. But in his sharp eyes, the Mizukage saw a sharp intelligence as they searched for the one who would join their group. Genjutsu himself nodded proudly at the 6. Not only were they powerful shinobi, but they would soon be his trusted lieutenants who will lead Kiri's army to a glorious victory against their enemies. That was why he frowned when he saw the senseless killing going on below in the sand. His veteran gaze saw quite a few Union Terrace ninjas, Jounin, Chunin fighting to the death to become immortal in Kiri's story. by becoming the seventh swordsman. Many of them had already died or were seriously injured, wounded in their quest to achieve eternal glory. More would soon follow. Genjutsu sighed when he saw one of the butcher ninja hunters two jounin in a shower of poison needles. The two men fell dead instantly, just as two jounin joined forces and stabbed a lone Ambu. However, their victory was short-lived when the dying Ambu beheaded them both before falling to the ground. They really don't understand, do they? Manhatsu asked with a sigh. It would seem that they believe that the strongest and most brutal will gain a place among us, Aku lamented bitterly. Earning a snort from Jinpachi and Amayuri, the oldest members of his group. That's the way of the fog, brats. You would do well to remember, Jinpachi warned fiercely. This is a tradition that you even had to go through, and so will all the other swordsmen of the future, Amayuri recalled. Earning dark smiles from Zabuza and Kisame. Even as the group was fighting among themselves, Genjutsu's attention was diverted to the dying Ambu on the ground. The Hounins had skewered his lungs and neck, leaving no room for recovery. Watching him choke and drown in his own blood was a gruesome sight, and made the Mizukage wonder why he even agreed to allow this tradition to happen. It would be acceptable in peacetime, but I needed every shinobi during this war. But he also knew that he had to tread a careful line with the elite ninja clans of Kiri, who preferred the old ways and tradition. Even if sometimes it didn't make sense. If he won this war, it would be better if he satisfied the desires of those clans. Being a kage was a bloody and gruesome business, after all. However, he was shocked when another man dressed in Ambu gear stepped in before the dying Ambu. The new shinobi was a tall man with bright blonde hair and sharp blue eyes hidden behind his simple Ambu mask. He was dressed in traditional Ambu gear and black pants with gauntlets protecting his arms. He was wearing fingerless gloves, and Genjet uploaded a face mask that protected the man's skin behind Ambu's mask. In his hands was a traditional sword. To the Mizukage's surprise, the dying Ambu weakly raised his fist before slamming it against his chest. That stopped the quarrels between the people next to the Mizukage, as everyone saw the strange scene. To cheers, the blonde Ambu gave a single gesture of recognition before cutting her sword. Most of the fighters would have missed the attack, but not the Mizukage and the other swordsmen. The injured Ambu was released from his agony when a quick blow through his brain and gave him a merciful death. That little display hadn't gone unnoticed by the 10 remaining wrestlers in the arena, all of whom warily looked at the last Ambu in the arena. I hope you last longer than your friend there, a ninja hunter teased. Ambu are pretty pathetic, and those are the standards you hold yourself to this day, he mocked one of the two Hounin, who had killed the other Ambu. The 7 remaining Hounin nodded their heads to their other competitors as they all gathered and surrounded the lonely Ambu on all sides. Everyone had to step back when the lonely Ambu picked up his fallen brother's sword and threw a cradle and 5 feet in front of him. Are you ready to die? He growled at one of the Jounin, earning a hidden smile from the blonde Ambu. We'll see, he replied. The Mizukage had only a moment before all the ninjas charged the lone Ambu at once from all sides. That's when the power roared. The intensity of the killing intent caught the remaining great swordsmen's instant attention completely. Everyone saw how 2 Chunin and 1 Hounin collapsed instantly. The rest of the enemies shuddered but charged independently. The Ambu raised their swords and Genjet raised a sharp aura to completely cover them. Wind Chakra. The first to arrive at the Ambu was the Unterni, who threw a storm of poison needles at him, all of which were torn to pieces by one of the Ambu's swords. He allowed the remaining Hounin to come up and try to skew him off his sides and backs. Mahei Suzuki narrowed his eyes sharply when he saw Lambu turn their swords sharply in a circular motion. Painful screams erupted in the arena as 3 of the Hounin saw their own Kuna and Tanto being torn in half courtesy of the impulsive attacks used by the Wind Chakra. Their shock was clearly visible as they couldn't even see the movement before it destroyed their weapons. And it didn't stop there when their palms opened up. The remaining shinobi instantly jumped out to avoid a similar fate, leaving the 3 stunned men to their fate. The blonde Ambu was on the injured men instantly, and to the surprise of the Mizukage and his personal guard. She delivered crushing but non-lethal blows to her stunned opponents that made them collapse on the ground in a small puddle of her own blood. A thick fog enveloped the arena, and the terrifying laughter of the ninja hunter and his remaining accomplices echoed out. Water style. Water bullet. Lighting style. Electromagnetic murder. Out of the fog, a shower of different jutsu charged towards the Ambu, who had already finished with his own hand seals. Style of the earth. Wall of the earth. The explosions rocked the Aran. While the chakra was fighting against the chakra, and just as the dust was about to settle, the fog was violently pushed away by the roaring wind waves that clearly exposed the now surprised Kiri warriors. They saw their only opponent come out of the earthen walls defending him with his hands. Hands together. It's over now, he proclaimed. Genjutsu and his swordsmen tensed up as the air began to cool. It was impossible to describe the feeling with words, but if they could, then it was an experience of having every ounce of light being absorbed. Everyone felt the feeling of death getting stronger and stronger as the 7 remaining Ambu opponents suddenly dropped their weapons and desperately grabbed their throats as they fell to their knees. Genhetsu narrowed his eyes sharply as the Ambu clenched his hands tightly. His opponents vomited, but instead of blood, gore or fluids, they spat out nothing but thick, dark smoke. No, it wasn't smoke, it was ash. The men and women beat painfully as more and more ashes were thrown from their lips. Zabuza, Kisame, Jinpachi and Amayuri watched in fascination as the lonely blonde Ambu calmly stepped between her enemies. Performance, he ordered. One of the Hounen looked at him murderously as he picked up his crib and made a desperate charge towards his bitter enemy. The blonde Ambu closed her eyes in resignation before clenching her fists. Genhetsu watched with fascination and horror as the accused Jounin screamed in pain when his skin caught fire. The poor man couldn't stop, even when his whole body was on fire, and 3 seconds later, he exploded in a shower of guts and blood, raining down on his struggling comrades. All the time, the lonely Ambu was separate and intact. Performance. Magetsu and Yaku felt their skin trembling as they heard that deep voice full of murderous intent. Those cold blue eyes were devoid of mercy. The look of death itself demanded the creatures before them to make their choice. And they succeeded. Genhetsu gave a sigh of relief as one by one, the remaining survivors barely nodded their heads in resignation. The Ambo gave a single nod of recognition before releasing his fist to the relief of his enemies as they stopped coughing and mercifully drifted into unconsciousness. Doctors and emergency support personnel rushed to the arena, immediately taking measures to stabilize the injured and seal the dead. It's over. Genjet climbed into the Ambo alone on the sand, watching the chaos around him with cold, detached eyes. It was the look of a man who had not only seen death, but became death itself. The Mizukage saw the victorious Ambu slowly walking towards the place where he had blown up the defiant Jounin. The floor was covered in steaming blood and flesh as the Ambu knelt down and picked up the traditional dog tag worn by many Kira shinobi. While these tags had no names or crucial details, if they had the nickname their respective shinobi liked inscribed on them. Genjutsu was surprised when the Ambu offered a silent prayer to the man's tag. Deceased, whose life he had taken before respectfully handing it over to the doctors. The same man looked at Genhetsu, and the Mizukage shuddered when he saw the disappointment in those blue eyes. Damn you for forcing me into this position. Even if no words were spoken, the message in those furious blue eyes reached the Mizukage, who felt guilty once again. Genjutsu couldn't do anything even when the end turned around and walked out of the arena. The remaining swordsman was quick to point and start discussing how that man had just insulted the Mizukage and all of them by not staying behind to address them and claim his victory. But Genjutsu was silent. Another faceless masked Ambu approached the Mizukage, causing the Kiri leader to look at him. The new arrival had also stopped the discussion between the remaining swordsmen. This is in me, Lord Sekondo. It was I who forced that man to participate in this death match. For a long time, the Zambu have felt ignored by the leadership. Even the people give more respect and importance to the body of hunters without ever recognizing the sacrifice of those who die in the shadows. We felt that with one of our own joining the great swordsman, it would help influence the opinion of the village. It might even influence some strong fighters to join our ranks that have shrunk quite a bit in this war. By doing so, I forced some of my men to participate, including him, without caring how they felt, which led them to this. I am very sorry, and I am ready to accept the consequences of my actions," confessed the commander of Ambu. Genjutsu felt as if someone had slapped him very brutally. He looked at the carnage in the battle arena. He remembered those cold blue eyes full of disappointment. He remembered Commander Ambu's confession, and it made him hate himself, because he had done the exact same thing. He had forced his 7 great swordsmen and a considerable force of skilled ninjas to start a war with Iwa. Genjutsu's reason for this action had been driven by his petty grudge against the second Tsuchikage. That he had carefully hidden behind the motive of a great conquest of Iwa that would bring Kiryu a new era of glory. His people had accepted his decision because they fully believe in him. And because of that decision, many of his people had died. Genjutsu clenched his fists in anger and shame when he realized that he had failed as a Kage. As he had forgotten to think about well-being of his people, he had not considered the feelings of his own men, who were forced to fight a senseless battle that led to his death because of his orders. Just as Commander Ambu had done the same to his subordinates. What kind of example had he set for his people? Commander Ambu saw a new fire born in the eyes of his Kage when the man turned to him. "Tell me everything about that boy." He jumped across the deserted roofs of the village at a rapid pace. The cold air continued to hit him, just as the pale moon adorned the earth with its light. It was almost midnight, and most of the village was asleep with a thick fog covering most of the districts. In this solitude, no one would witness an Ambo. Nor would they see his nightmares coming to haunt him from the afterlife. He stared at his trembling hands, and only for a moment, they were stained with blood again. The pain, sadness, and fear had been clearly visible in the eyes of the Jounin he had killed just half an hour ago. Those black eyes so full of pain had brought back miserable memories of her past. Why is that? He defended that disturbing voice and closed his eyes. A darkness followed him, threatening to swallow him up completely, but he ran away from him. Tonight, Noel said to himself. Fortunately, she saw the first face of her cozy apartment later on, which brought her trembling heart some much-needed relief. He ran away from the darkness, faster than before, as if his life depended on it. Very soon he reached the door and forced himself to regain his composure. As if a switch had been turned, her haunted gaze turned into one of calm, and her trembling hands calmed down completely. He bit his thumb and applied a small portion of his blood on the door, activating a series of faintly glowing seals. Before the door slowly opened, allowing him to enter. It was dark when he entered, and yet he was not alone. The kitchen lights were burning, and soon a woman came out. Even in the dark, her long blonde hair shone brighter than the sun itself. Her fair white skin reflected more of her beauty in the moonlight, and her pale blue eyes that looked so much like his that they looked at him. "How was it?" asked his voice, barely audible despite the silence of the night. He entered and reached the dining room table, where he placed his faceless Ambu mask. She felt as if a cloak had been torn off, and she could breathe again as she felt a hand placed on her shoulder. "It's done, isn't it?" she asked knowingly. He nodded. She didn't say anything, and instead helped him to sit down. He then returned to the kitchen and returned moments later with a steaming bowl of miso ramen. He looked at her, and she gave him a little smile that was sad and encouraging at the same time. "Thank you," he said gratefully, holding out his hand, which she gladly gave him. Her skin was warm and soft, unlike his, which was scarred. He looked at her, still unable to believe someone who was not his family, nor his compatriots could understand. Therefore, it was a credit to her abilities as a Kunioshi and as a person that only made her more dangerous. She knew she had his trust and could use it to destroy him, but she never did. Maybe it was because he knew he expected her to betray him, considering where his loyalties lie. Or maybe a part of her had come to take care of him after almost 5 years of pretending to be his legal wife, just like a part. From his heart, he had come to take care of her as his wife and his friend. "Do you think he will ask you to join?" she asked hesitantly, her beautiful blue eyes spoiled between worry and curiosity. "I think he will," he confessed, remembering the way Mizukage had looked at him. "The superiors will be delighted. They've been pressuring you about this for so long, she congratulated him, earning a slight smile from him. "They are always pushing us both, and no," she replied playfully, earning a wry smile from her. "Look at it this way, Naruto. You will be closer to the Mizukage, closer to what we have been working on since the last 5 years. In the Ambo, you had to watch your every step, but now you can finally get a break," he suggested hopefully. "Nothing is easy, and no. I have never felt that your job in the Hunter Corps has been easy, nor will I be safe as one of the 7. We'll have to be even more careful now," he warned, which made her feel reluctantly. He decided to silence his problematic thoughts for a while, and let himself be regaled by the fascinating smell of his favorite food. His eyes were closed, and yet, he felt Aino's smile, signaling that he was satisfied with his effort. "I was hoping I could do the same for her one day." She stood behind him, and gently put her soft hands on his shoulders. He felt the calming chakra invade his body, washing away the pain in his tense muscles as he ate the first bite of ramen. That brought a complacent smile on his face. He was content as he gulped down the ramen, and his muscles relaxed under his touch. She leaned over and placed her cheek against his, slowly lowering her face mask even past his chin. He looked at her once and bent down to press his lips against hers. It was a kind gesture reciprocated by her, as they both allowed their loads to be washed. She fought for her house just as he fought for his. Even if it had been years since they had last seen their own motherlands, their bliss was shattered by a knock at their door. And a loud male voice calling their name. I knew who I belonged to, and if I was here, then it only meant one thing. She looked him in the eye and gave him a wink. "It's time." Genjutsu and the remaining 6 great swordsmen had gathered at Mizukage's office. In front of them was Commander Ambu, who had just finished presenting all the files they had on the mysterious Ambu who won the bloody battle to become the 7th swordsman. We called him the Young Wolf, an apt codename given by the previous Ambu commander for him, as he was one of the youngest boys to join our ranks. He has never lost any battle or failed any mission assigned to him, no matter how hard or painful it is, the Ambu leader explained, a clearly audible pride in his voice. "He's just a boy," Genhepsu commented, surprised by the boy's young age, despite what his records said. "He is an orphan, my lord. He used to sneak into the academy and attended classes for a year to become a shinobi. He was good enough not to be noticed until one of our retired Ambu entered the academy to teach and caught him. He saw the kid's potential and gave it to the Black Ops. He was made by one of us after we saw his potential, and he has never disappointed since," Commander Ambu explained. "These records say that his place of birth is. It is the village of Nachi, near the eastern coast, a small fishing colony." "What about his parents?" he asked Manistu seriously. "We investigated, but found no concrete records, Lord Manhetsu. However, the village was full of orphaned children from the last war. Kiri had just settled down, and the records were not properly maintained until her father set up a proper system. But I assure you that he is one of our best and loyal Kiri soldiers," Commander Ambu fiercely promised. "Huh. Naruto, what a strange name. No last name?" Akasame asked curiously, while reading the records. "Unfortunately not, he is already married, and that to for a pretty blonde hunter." "Too bad for you, Aku," Amayuri teased, earning a cold stare from the former ninja hunter, now turned swordsman. Aku ignored Amayuri's comments, and instead turned his attention to the Mizukage and his son. Even Zabuza watched her closely. "The girl he's married to is called Ino. A successful hunter ninja whom I know in passing, but as a friend," Aku replied. "Boy, does he have quite a body count on his hands for someone so young. 234 confirmed deaths is not a bad start," Zabuza smiled. While everyone was busy familiarizing themselves with Naruto's achievements and history, Genjutsu's eyes had caught something that Commander Imbuno wanted them to see. The Mizukage looked at the man seriously then. "If he is a good officer, then surely I would have heard about him by now. Why haven't I heard of such a splendid shinobi?" He seriously questioned Genhepsu, and he was sure that Commander Ambu shuddered. "Naruto is a little strange, my lord. From what I have seen, he has only a handful of friends and lives peacefully with his wife. He is loved by his youth and respected by his peers and leaders, but hates the spotlight so much that he insists on keeping his mission record secret even among Ambu. He was one of the candidates I was hoping would succeed me in the future, but I think he somehow detests leadership. The Ambu commander explained warily. What about this mission? The records say he disobeyed orders and returned behind enemy lines despite orders ordering him to retreat to Kiri. Demanded Genjutsu. He could not afford to have lost cannons in his ranks, and this evidence was not painting a good picture. To his surprise, Commander Ambu did not flinch or shrink at that accusation. Instead, the man actually straightened up with pride visible in his fierce gaze. We had sent 2 squads to assassinate an important political figure in Tierra del Fuego. The mission was a success, and Naruto managed to evacuate his squadron successfully, however. The other squadron was ambushed by Konoha Ambu. Some were killed, while the rest were taken prisoner. When he found out about this, Naruto disobeyed the command and returned for the Ambu who were captured. Only 2 were alive when he found them, killed Konoha Ambu, and erased all evidence of Kiri's involvement in this whole incident. The Ambu leader reported, and the 2 Ambu who were still alive questioned Manhatsu with his narrow eyes. They were in no condition to be evacuated, so he gave them a merciful end and returned the bones to them to be returned to their families. He's stubborn, I accept that, but he's also one of the best warriors the Zombu Black Ops can offer Kiri. A man of honor and courage, one who truly cares about his comrades and nation. Which is more than we can say for quite a few of our shinobi, the Ambu commander replied, his stern gaze landing on some of the swordsmen for a moment. Genjutsu closed his eyes for a few moments as he pondered over all the information that was available to him. He had provided about the boy so far, a borderline S-rank ninja with a great success story, up to 1 S-rank mission in his career. He was strong if the battle was a test, and he was actually loved by his comrades. Even the Zombu who died in the battle had given Naruto a respectful greeting before the young captain gave him a merciful death. He could do with a lot worse, and yet Genhetsu wanted to see the child for himself. Take him, he ordered. Commander Ambu nodded and quickly disappeared to carry out his orders. Genjutsu soon after dismissed his remaining swordsmen, except for his only son who sat at the window, watching his beloved village, currently protected by a thick fog. What do you think, Mangetsu? He questioned the father while looking at his son. He's the best option we have for now, but there's something about him that doesn't sit well with me. I can't pinpoint what this feeling is, but when I saw him fight, there was something I saw, Manhatsu whispered curiously. What did you see? He questioned Genhatsu, well aware that his son had sharp instincts and was a good judge of someone's character. I saw pain and hatred in those eyes, but most of all I saw guilt. He revealed Magetsu with a faraway look in his eyes. It's natural, my son. We made him kill his comrades. Genjutsu refused, but his son shook his head. I don't know why, but I think he's been through something like this before, maybe a lot worse. The hateful look he gave you before he left you wasn't alone. For you, but also for yourself, explained Mangetsu. Genjutsu was about to reply when his son just smiled and cut him off. Or maybe I'm just seeing things that don't exist. I could be wrong, father. You have proven his worth as a shinobi, now put him to the test as a worthy person to lead Kiri and her people. I know you can do it, Manhatsu whispered with a smile. Manhatsu also disappeared from the room, leaving his father to ponder over his words. It was a well-known fact that Manhatsu had very sharp instincts, even better than Genhatsu himself. Maybe your child was right and needed to evaluate the child for himself. Genjutsu made up his mind and waited. He knocked on the door first, and when the permission was given, he entered. Most people would have felt honored or nervous when Tsukage called them for a personal meeting. He was at peace, and it was reflected on his masked face when Genjutsu carefully observed him. Remove that face mask. He obeyed without hesitation, revealing his pale, clean-shaven face to the cage. Your disrespectful self accused Genjutsu, with sharp eyes looking at him, but was surprised when the Ambu never flinched. Your actions didn't do it, order respect, Naruto replied flatly, earning a yedwich from Genjutsu. But a small smile came on the cage's lips. I was told you were blunt, now I know why, Genjutsu mused, as she motioned for him to sit down. The Mizukage did not miss the boy, giving him a gesture. Grateful before moving on to sit in front of him. He was young and handsome, but his stone-cold eyes were full of the hardships he had endured all his life. I've been through your career, and it's impressive to say the least. Kirigakure needs children like you to help us win this war, Genjutsu stated honestly. I am at the service of my nation, but as you are now, and the decisions you have made, you are not worthy of my loyalty. Genhetsu blinked in shock. Never in his entire life had he met a fellow shinobi who didn't get it and respect it. Many even loved him, but this green guy had the balls to say something like that to his face. I can have you executed for that crime, Genjutsu warned. Some of his killing attempts that just made the kid smile. You can, but it will only prove my point. A Mizukage who has to threaten his subordinates with death in order for them to obey him is no real cage. He replied to Naruto fearlessly, and looked directly into the shocked man's eyes. What have I done to earn such contempt? Genhetsu asked, now truly puzzled, and less angry with this boy. You failed your people. You started a war with Iwa when there was little or no chance of victory, and he killed your men miserably. You allowed a senseless slaughter of dozens more of your men, just so that one of them could become the seventh swordsman. You can say that it was tradition, and many expected you to defend them, but when I looked into your eyes, I saw that you knew that it was a pointless tradition, but you did it anyway. You are afraid, and because of that weakness, men died. My men, Naruto said furiously. His voice was still calm as he pushed a picture of a 14-year-old boy towards the Mizukage. Do you know who he is? He demanded Captain Ambu. To his shame, Genjutsu did not know the shinobi, even if he was dressed in the uniform of Kiri, my subordinate. A kid whom I recruited at Ambu because he had great potential, a kid forced to fight in his meaningless competition. I had to put him out of his misery, watching all his hopes and dreams vanish as my sword delivered the mercy killing. He died because you were weak. He died because you didn't have the backbone to shut down all the assholes calling for this massacre. When we need all the able-bodied shinobi on the front line, you demand respect, but you deserve none. Naruto snarled. Genjutsu felt really saddened when he saw the boy's smiling parents posing with him in the photograph, so it looked like he was their only child. He recalled that Naruto left Ambu when he was mortally wounded, and beyond any. What would you do if you were in my position? When Genjutsu was asked with a defeated sigh, no matter how much it hurt, he knew that Naruto was right. Because deep down Genjutsu had known all this, but he sanctioned all those decisions regardless. He would do the right thing for our people, no matter how difficult or painful it is. You're not here to keep people happy, you're here to keep them safe and make them thrive. Ask me to dedicate my life for Kiri, and I will do it in the blink of an eye. But I will not let my men's lives be destroyed by such nonsense, he replied. Naruto honestly. You have a stronger will than mine, son, Genjutsu congratulated. The second Mizukage got up from his chair and went to the window, watching the village for a very long moment. Naruto soon joined him as both men looked at the village that was currently at peace. I understand that you are angry with me. Disappointed, even however, Kiri is full of people who are fans of traditions observed for decades. Even my power as a Mizukage is limited in such matters, Genjutsu confessed, and raised a hand to silence the boy as he was about to protest again. Naruto pursed his lips and watched as the older man clenched his fist. It was then that the young Ambu felt a fraction of the power of the Mizukage, and it was intimidating to say the least. But you're right. I must do what is right for my people, even if it means making decisions that are not acceptable to them. I will strive to achieve that goal, Genjutsu promised sincerely, offering his hand towards the boy. He frowned when, instead of shaking hands, Naruto took a few steps back and drew his sword. Genhetsu tensed up but made no move and happened to smile when the boy knelt down before him and promised him his sword. So I, Captain Naruto of the Zanbu Black Ops, pledge my life in the service of this great nation and its Mizukage. I swear on my honor and my life to protect these lands, its people and its beauty with everything that is around me. Scope, including my life. From today on, I will live, fight and die as the seventh Fog Swordsman. Genhetsu looked into those eyes full of determination and loyalty. The Mizukage had not even failed to miss the small alteration in the boy's vow. He had vowed to fight and die for Kiri. To serve his Mizukage, bade no Genjutsu personally. Some men would have been furious at such an insult, but Genjutsu was even more impressed by the boy. He was a true Kiri soldier, a shinobi willing to put the nation first before anyone. He was brave if the blunt way. In that he had faced and made Genjutsu realize his mistakes. A man of honor and courage. Strangely, it warmed Genjutsu's heart to find such a soul after a long time. It was Naruto's turn to be surprised when the second Mizukage knelt down as well and put a hand on his shoulder. With a smile on his pale face. "Thank you, son. I, Genjutsu Ozuki Mr. Second, swear that I will never misuse your loyalty," Genjutsu promised with a kind smile. There was a flicker. It barely lasted for a moment, but Genjutsu didn't miss it and confirmed some suspicions his son had. About Naruto. Just for a moment, he had seen the sadness and guilt pass through the boy's eyes before that stone-cold look appeared in an instant. "I wish some people could have seen this day," Naruto whispered sadly. Genjutsu instantly regretted doubting the boy for a second. He had to remind himself that Majesty had advised him to give this boy a chance. His records didn't say much, Genjutsu said carefully, but not kindly. "I kept it that way and I'd like him to keep doing that." Too many bad memories, Naruto confessed, earning a nod from the Mizukage. "I understand. The only thing a man can do is move forward, no matter how painful the past is," Genjutsu admitted, as he helped the boy up again. He was surprised to see that Naruto was composed and in control of his emotions, but Genjutsu reminded himself that this boy had served in the Black Ops all his life. Controlling his emotions was an essential part of the job. In that regard, Naruto was half at best, but Genjutsu didn't mind, and, in fact, welcomed the boy's honesty. He reminded her what her youngest son would have been like. Genjutsu suppressed a painful scream that arose from his memories. If he closed his eyes, he could still see the woman he loved turning to dust before his very eyes along with her unborn child in her womb. "I would never do it, ever. Forgive the bastard who took the woman he loved, if it meant burning the whole world in his fury." Dismissing those dark thoughts, Genhetsu gestured to his new swordsman to follow him, and was pleased to see Naruto obey without question. They both walked lower and lower towards the cage tower until they reached the basement. The guards instantly bowed upon seeing the Mizukage in their presence, earning a nod from their leader. "Where are we going?" questioned Naruto, unable to hide the curiosity in his voice. "Starting at you," Genjutsu replied with a smile. After a pause, Genjutsu decided to ask a question that had been plaguing his heart ever since he had seen the boy fight in the arena. "Is that jutsu you used in the arena a Kekai Genkai?" he asked Genhetsu curiously. Naruto continued walking alongside the Mizukage as they passed through a dark hallway. He didn't dare close his eyes or risk the screams that sounded in his ears turning into real faces. Faces I wanted to forget more than anything else. The most important of them were those disturbing black eyes. Why is that? She could hear that painful question lingering in her ears, threatening to consume her heart in pain and agony. "I can't say for sure, but it's a jutsu that only I can use. Some have tried to copy the same thing, and it didn't end well for them," Naruto replied calmly, making Genjutsu shudder, as he could already imagine that there would only be charred corpses left of those fools who had tried to master that dangerous. "I would like to explain how that power works," questioned Genjutsu, earning a small smile from the Zambu. "I'll leave notes once he's dead." "Not before that, I hope you understand," Naruto said, amusement always present in his voice. Genjutsu laughed at that statement. But he understood and accepted the boy's desire to keep his secrets on his own. It was another trait that I had previously seen among many Zambu. The Mizukage saw that they had almost reached the destination, and the remaining swordsmen were already waiting for both of them. Seeing that, Naruto instantly lifted his face mask. Even his previously friendly aura turned icy, and Genjutsu felt that the boy was ready to attack if the situation forced him to do so. No one said a word as Genjutsu and his new swordsman marched towards a lonely day where a bald man was waiting for them, with a cheerful smile that he found disturbing. There was a carefully designed box on the table, and Naruto had to force his heart to stay still, as he instantly felt the energy inside to call out to him. Genjutsu must have felt it too, as the Mizukage gave him a wink to take a step forward. Naruto nodded and walked forward until he was face to face with the bald man. He was shorter than him, and in his 50s, his eyes did not match in color, which only served to make the Ambo before him more cautious. The old man smiled at him and took a step forward to put his cold hand on Naruto's arm. The same man looked into Naruto's eyes. "I feel a lot of pain in you, more than most people I've ever met. It engulfs your heart like a raging storm, never to rest. It clings to the skin of your skin like ash," the old man whispered. "You don't know anything," Naruto refuted, and fought a shudder when the old man grasped her hand more firmly. "Look at me if you want, but never hide your true self from this, or he'll have it destroyed by you," the old man warned. Before Naruto could ask or say anything, the old man had already left him, and now he had gone into the box. Almost all the other great swordsmen. They gasped as the old man pulled out a finely crafted long sword from the box. It was still sheathed in its sheath, but already everyone felt its persistent power hidden inside. The old man leaned over to Naruto and respectfully offered him the weapon with a slight bow. The Ambu captain hesitated for a moment before he got ready. With trembling hands, he accepted the gun and slowly began to pull it out of the sheath. His eyes strayed to the Mizukage, who nodded with a smile, and Naruto couldn't help but feel grateful to the man. When the sword hilt carried a roaring wolf as its stealth, a tribute to his code name Am. Apprehension and excitement bubbled up in Naruto's heart as he completely removed the sword for everyone to see. The first thing he noticed was that the weapon was as light as a feather in his hand, even though its length was almost half that of his own height, and he was by no means short in stature. Then, he noticed the intricate seals carved into the painfully blinding metal that seemed to glow even more in the dark. Bravely, he practiced some swings, and was pleased to note that he was very easy to move and had a good reach. But other than that, it was just an ordinary sword, and nothing like the other famous weapons currently in the possession of his fellow swordsmen. A part of him felt disappointed, but he didn't let it show in his eyes. The old man fucked towards him again until he was standing right next to Naruto. The Ambu officer looked at him and saw a conscious look present in that veteran look. "If you hide your true self from the sword, then it will do the same to you. This weapon is now a part of you, and in order for it to work properly, both of you must be with each other. Free yourself," the old man advised sternly. "I am free," Naruto stubbornly refuted, unable to understand what was going on here. "You're hiding the real you. Once you get out of those barriers, you will really see this sword," the old man said honestly. "What's his name?" he asked Naruto with a sigh, knowing that every sword wielded by the 7 great swordsmen of the mist always had a name. This was the newest one added in the annals ever, so it would surely have a name too. The old man gave him such an evil smile that Naruto's heart stopped for a moment. He bit his lip in frustration, seeing that the other swordsmen were not impressed with this delay. Even the Mizukage and his son were hoping for something better than the show currently unfolding. At this rate, he gave a tired sigh before deciding to go ahead with the advice he was given. It wasn't something he would do to a person, but a sword would never betray his secrets. One by one, he allowed the numerous, expertly constructed barriers in his mind and heart to unravel and shudder, as a new power surged through his entire body. No words could describe the feeling of this power that was now flooding each and every cell of his body. He was consuming it. He saw what he saw, felt what he felt, thought what he thought, until he could not decipher his own thoughts from those of this strange power. I knew that their eyes had already closed, and yet I could still see the basement they were in. He observed the astonishment clearly etched on the faces of each and every person, including the Mizukage. Everyone was looking at him in a different light, and he didn't know why. Curious, he looked at the light sword in his hand, and was surprised to see that it had turned completely black. Its metal, once bright, had become so dark that no light could pierce through it. A similar darkness was swirling around him, seeping into him, and he saw her two blue eyes shining menacingly in the darkness. The old blacksmith was now looking at his terrifying eyes with a knowing smile spreading across his lips. "What's your name?" he asked. His grip on the sword tightened, releasing a quantity even greater of energy in the air, almost drowning out everything and everyone else. Strangely, that made him smile wickedly as he whispered her name, Muramasa. And he couldn't help but smile as he watched the Mizukage dressed in his traditional uniform take a step forward towards a young man with hair as bright as the sun. For once, Kiri was not shrouded in fog or mist, but the sunlight now adorned the mysterious land that brought with it hopes of a new future. I could hear the screams of all the people who had gathered around the cage tower. The story was being written right in front of her eyes, one that she and her husband had fought for so long. The other great swordsmen had already been given their honors, and now it was time for the newest and last member of their group to receive his. She was quite surprised when the Mizukage presented a white-colored ori to Naruto. The former Ambu officer was still wearing his face mask, but his eyes betrayed his own curiosity about the gift. His new large sword rested inside the scabbard hanging from his hip, while a smaller version, like the one with the same blade, rested perfectly on Naruto's back. Originally, Muramasa was supposed to be twin great swords, but the blacksmiths had recommended against it. Many believed that the blacksmiths wanted that great sword to be unique and not to be compared with another weapon of the same brand. On the other hand, they could not directly disobey the wishes of their cage, so they compromised by developing a bit shorter like Muramasa's version, made of the same metal, and a mysterious jutsu that made these blades so powerful, in a way that worked better for Naruto, as he now had a large sword to wield in open combat, and another shorter weapon of the same caliber to help in hand-to-hand combat in confined spaces. She was taken out of her thoughts when her husband started looking at the gift given to him by his supreme leader. Unlike in the past, where he was always dressed in ambo gear, this time, the blonde officer had finally changed his appearance as an acceptance of his new way of life and responsibilities. He was wearing a full-sleeved black shirt, covered with blue trousers and a pair of combat boots. In addition to them, he was wearing a gray-colored bulletproof jacket, commonly worn by almost all Kiri shinobi. On his forehead, there was a similar gray-colored diadem, proudly displaying the symbol of his people. The only difference between him and one of the thousands of shinobi currently standing in the streets watching the ceremony was his face mask and combat boots. But everything changed when Naruto allowed the ori to fall to its full length before passing his right arm through the shoulder opening. Many in the crowd gasped in surprise and curiosity when they saw two different things on the ori's back. The first part was the coloring on the lower edge of the ori that is filled with the same color as the Ambu Black Ops flag. To top it off, even a minor symbol of the Special Operations Unit was engraved among those colors, a special tribute of the Mizukage to the unit that had always protected the people from the shadows. Hino did not miss the subtle change in the body language of the Ambu squads guarding the ceremony from various rooftops. For a moment, his shoulders swelled with pride before he stepped back into the shadows to do his duty as they had always done. Hino couldn't help but recognize Genetsuzuki's smart decision. With such a subtle gesture, he had managed to reaffirm the Zambu Black Ops' complete loyalty to himself. A powerful gust of wind blew through the village, making her raise one hand to protect her eyes. And that's when she noticed the other remarkable thing on the back of the bank, now completely used by her husband. The seventh. Those words were clearly engraved in dark red swatch, visible even to the weakest civilians. The village erupted with never-before-seen victor with any of the other swordsmen when they had received their own gifts. Hino couldn't help but smile when she saw her husband give a subtle bow towards the people, which caused another wave of victor. He was already a hero in many young eyes and hearts, but she also saw quite a few who looked. They were easy to spot as they proudly flaunted their family lineage in their attire and by their appearance. The Kagaya and Agoromo clans were the two founding clans behind Kiri, and were almost feared and respected in the same way that the Uchiha and Senju were. In Konoha, even the Mizukage couldn't ignore their opinions, and Genjutsu had clearly despised them by filling the ranks of the great swordsmen with so many commoners. Only Mangetsu, Aku, and Kisame were affiliated with the dozens of prominent ninja clans that played an important role in Kiri's rule. The remaining four, including Hino's husband, who was the last and newest member, were just commoners who had risen through the ranks on their own merit. Still, many ninja clans saw this move by the Mizukage as an attempt to discredit their importance. What the fools didn't understand was that while the great clans made up almost 50% of Kiri's forces, the other half was made up of ninjas from ordinary families, including civilians. Especially in a broader comparison, the ninja population constituted only 40% of the entire population of the earth, of the water. It was vital for Genjutsu to reaffirm both parties' faith in himself after quite a few previous failures made by him. Naruto, in his flashy new uniform and spiky blonde hair, with two big bangs covering his face, was the perfect image of a commoner, rising to one of the most positions high from the village. An example that hard work, skill and dedication to the village finally led to such an honor. If only these simple people knew the games that her leadership is playing, or if they knew what she knew about her new hero. And she was not standing on the balcony of her apartment with her funny eyes curiously looking at her husband, who was trying to make his way inside the complex of their society, but was currently stalled by a few young geninos. Unlike the other swordsmen, Naruto did not ignore the young generation with a threatening glare, even if they were being rude. Only Manhatsu and Aku were similar to him in that way and always tried to address the queries of their fellow comrades, as they did today at the ceremony. The other swordsmen clearly didn't like it, and I didn't know that in their heads they believed that such actions would erode some of the fear that the world, including Kiri's own people, had of the 7 great swordsmen if someone from their village could randomly approach them for something. Until now, such different ideologies had not led to any conflict within the group, but they were a dangerous group of men and women with ambitions of their own. I hope you know what you're doing, Naruto. He's good at this. Hino did not blink when another man dressed in an Ambu uniform appeared next to him. She had felt his presence approaching, a courtesy she never bestowed on most people. Hello, Sekumo. She heard the white-haired man sigh at the use of his real name, but decided to let him go and instead stood against the wall. And he didn't erect a powerful genjutsu and activate the sealing jutsu army that Naruto had created around his apartment, which effectively prevented anyone from seeing or hearing under any circumstances. Something that did not go unnoticed by Sekumo, who was still not used to the level of secrecy maintained by the couple. Knowing that they were safe, the White Leaf Fang took off his mask and sat down warily on the dining table chair, while Hino took an adjacent seat next to him. The superiors are satisfied with his progress and have assigned new directives. It began when a scroll was transmitted to him, and he did not bite his thumb and smeared his blood on the scroll, allowing it to be opened. It took her a few seconds to read his new orders, leaving her completely speechless, making her look to take out Kumo with disbelief. "You can't be serious," whispered, a hint of anxiety visible in her eyes. "Unfortunately, I am. We are losing badly on all fronts. Lord Tobirama is dead and Lord Irisin is young and has not yet adapted to his position as an Hokage. We are fighting a 3-way war against Kumo and Uesuna. 30% of our forces have been killed in action and another 15% have been left in various states of injuries. The only reason we are still in the fight, despite such losses, is because of the power of the Uchiha and Senju clans. The Uchiha are involved in a bitter war with Uesuna with many clans such as the Inuzuka, Sarutobi, Aburame and Yamanka clans, supporting them with other shinobi daimyo men. While the Senju clan is doing everything to stop Kumogakure's power, with the help of the attack clan, Nara, Yuga, Akimi, Chishimura. Even as we speak, our people are dying by the hundreds, Sekumo explained bitterly. His own helplessness for not being able to help his people in such terrible times clearly visible on his anguished face. After all, he was the leader of all his nation's operatives currently active within Kirigakure. What about Utsusio Gakure? He asked Hino hesitantly, earning a nod from the older man. They are the only allies we have left, and they are the only force standing in the way between us and the Kinkaku force. Not forgetting Kumo's deadly twin Hinchiriki, and the brothers Gold and Sliver, Sekumo said worriedly. Hino bit his lip in frustration. The Gold and Silver brothers were the same ones responsible for starting this whole war together with the Third Reikikage, whose ambition was to conquer the entire world. Those brothers, along with the now Third Reikikage, had ambushed the Cage Peace Summit and brutally murdered the second Reikaikage and his entourage. Kumogakure suffered a coup d'etat in a single night, where the elite Kinkaku Black Ops forces murdered any shinobi who supported peace. Not that there were many to begin with. The flames of the first great shinobi war had not yet been extinguished and another war had been started. To avenge the grudges of the recent past, the second Reikaikage and the second Cage were the only Cages who insisted on peace, a wish for which both paid in blood. As after killing the second Reikaikage, the Gold and Silver brothers along with the King unit, Kaku Black Ops ambushed and killed the second Okage who was fleeing. With the death of Esirama in the first war and Tobirama in this war, the pillars that held the Senju clan together had been broken. The Uchiha were suffering their own turmoil after the loss of Madara and Izuna, and the shinobi of the same caliber. They had not yet emerged again in this terrible hour. With 2 dead Cages, the rest didn't take long to back up their own agenda. The third Reikaikage started a conflict with the Tira del Fuego with the help of the Daimyo Rei, who had his eyes set on the fertile lands of the south. He was joined by the Earth of the Earth and the Tsuchikage. Eventually, both factions managed to pursue the land of wind and hunting to join their crusade, with the promise of desperately needed water in the desert nation. All these hard facts made one thing absolutely clear to Hino. His people were dying. Hino promised, as his fists clenched furiously as he imagined all the people at home he had once met. They were alive, or they would recognize her when she returned home. If she came back home? Well, you are our top-ranked agent in the Hunter Corps. Your opinion is very much taken into account by the Kiri leadership. Go after the leader of your group with this information, and let Naruto take care of the rest. He is the only one who can convince the Mizukage. I heard that the man has taken a liking to our boy, Sekumo said with a smile as he passed him another scroll, that he decided to open later. Instead, she looked at Sekumo and it was clear for her to see that he was impressed with Naruto's progress. Naruto will follow orders, but I have doubts if the Mizukage will listen to him. He's still new to the group, Ino warned, only to get a dark but fleeting look on Sekumo's face. Once Naruto knows that we plan to involve Kirigakure against Kumo, he will sell his soul if that's what it takes to do so. Sekumo promised without any hesitation. Why is that? When Ino was asked with concern, she liked to think that she knew most of the things about her husband. But the way Sekumo said that implied another darker aspect of Naruto that she didn't know. If he hasn't told you, then it's not my place to reveal his past. But let's just say that Kumogakure and the Kinkaku Black Ops unit are the ones Naruto hates the most in this world. They are the reason why he accepted this mission with you from his village. Hino, be careful with him. He is a veteran of the First Shinobi World War and the last surviving member of that program, Sekumo explained gravely. Hino's face lost all color when the implications of these revelations dawned on her, but the unit was annihilated. In the last days of the First Ninja War, they were the special forces that Yuzu had sent to rescue Esirama Senju, after he was surrounded deep behind enemy lines in the Land of Lightning. In their attempt to save the first Cage, they faced the newly formed Kinkaku Black Ops forces and Kumo's two-tailed beasts. His intervention helped Esirama escape, but he later succumbed to his injuries. But for that to happen, S-Unit stayed behind as decoys, and they were finally annihilated to the last man. He recited and not perfectly. After that event, Tobirama Senju was given account of the need for Konoha to have its own Black Ops unit that could perform such dangerous missions. That had laid the foundation for Konoha's own Ambu Black Ops, which was still a young but fast-growing Special Forces unit. In order to become a successful operative, each and every story of each village had been ingrained in his mind, including many of the missions that were classified for the common shinobi. But the S-Unit was killed almost a decade ago. If Naruto had been one of them, that would mean. Sekumo knowingly gave him a wink as he stumbled over the unspoken conclusion. Naruto has seen more war than the two combined. He has been on the front line since he was a kid, and this is just the tip of the iceberg as to why he hates Kumogakure and the Kinkaku Black Ops. His superiors at Ufume had warned that there were much deeper reasons behind Naruto's hatred. Naruto? Reasons that are personal to him, and why Naruto has sought Kumogakure's death all his life. He has that opportunity now, and trust me, he will make sure they pay in blood for all the pain they caused him, Sekumo explained seriously. So our two villages are using their hatred, Hino said sadly, to think that his kind and caring friend had such a dark past. Sekumo gave him a pained smile in his statement as he picked up his Anbu mask and got up from his chair. All shinobi are tools, Hino. We are the ones who protect from the shadows, to fight and die for the homeland without receiving anything in return. That's what it means to be a ninja. Naruto knows, and so do you, Sekumo whispered as he disappeared from the apartment. And she did not look at the other scroll that she had not yet opened, and it filled her with fear. They were playing a dangerous game to this day, and now it would come back. Even more deadly. Of all the villages, Kirigakure had the worst reputation when it came to treating enemy prisoners. It was better to take his own life than to risk exposing himself to the hospitality fog, which drove most people crazy, or their gruesome and painful deaths. But they had their orders, and it was like Sekumo said, "We are the root that protects the tree from the shadows." And she did not see him silently going through his new orders, printed on the two scrolls, before setting fire to them in his own hands, and reducing them to ashes that soon disappeared inside his own skin. I was still not used to seeing him exercising that mysterious power. For years, she had wondered how she had mastered such power. But now that she knew that he had been part of the infamous S-Unit, some things started to make sense to her. "What do you think?" she asked hesitantly, and saw him aimlessly staring at the ceiling of his apartment. "I will never forget her pain," he whispered. "Salute." She blinked as she heard his voice and a soft hand landing on her shoulder. Just for a moment, I had seen them all again, just before they disappeared once more. Kumogakure took everything from me. My family, my friends, my comrades. It's time for them to feel the same pain, Naruto said bitterly. They're asking you to attack that place. You know it's a suicide, she warned him, but he had already decided. I won't be alone. I do not know how, but I will make the Mizukage see the reason. And then I will bring pain to the land of lightning. I don't care how dangerous or suicidal it is, because this is the path I have chosen, he decided. I just don't want you to take unnecessary risks. You fight for your country as I fight for mine, but don't think that your life is worth nothing. Superiors may feel that way towards you, but not towards me. I care about you as your ally, your friend and your fake wife, he said with a bittersweet smile, which made him smile and gave him a tender kiss on the forehead. Don't worry about me. Once this war is over and our nations are safe once more, we will return home no matter what, Naruto said with a gentle smile. Do you promise? She asked, daring him to say otherwise, but he never did. I never go back on my word. You know that, Naruto said shyly as he hugged him and allowed him to wrap his strength arms around him. You did well today. People certainly loved their new hero, joked Hino, who earned a half-hearted laugh from him, if only he could see the way his face fell, as he remembered all the people he had cheated on today. In the world, girl, you either die a hero or you live long enough to become what you hated. He could still hear his old man's words ringing in his ears. He could still remember everything. I wonder what you'll think of me now, father. What have I become? What would everyone think of me now? If he closed his eyes, he could still see the red-headed man with tall, broad shoulders with pale skin. Next to him was a striking woman with fair skin and long blonde hair that reached to her waist. Her blue eyes were so full of love and warmth as she and the man put their hands on the shoulders of two children in front of them. One was older than the other with beautiful blonde hair and happy blue eyes. He was holding the hand of the youngest little boy with the dark red hair covering half of his face. I'll see you someday, once I get justice. It was that promise made years ago that drove him even today. The power of that resolution that made him betray and lie to every person who had believed in him and trusted him. The pain in his heart makes him able to bear to deceive all the people around him, lying to everyone, including the woman in his arms. What about the food situation? Naruto and the other swordsmen listened in silence as Tsukage and the various clan chiefs along with high-ranking officers discussed their nation's future course of action in this war. Having suffered losses without much gains, Kiri's leadership was determined to make right decisions in the future. But his focus was only partly on the ongoing discussion. and depended more on seeing quite a few clan heads shooting him hostile or distrustful glances from time to time. The daimyo has agreed to extend all his support in terms of men, supplies and money, as long as we can show him considerable profits in return. If not, he has warned that Kiri's leadership will undergo a massive change, Genjutsu announced. How dare that civilian say such a thing? Mr. Stoned Hero Agoromo, we are doing our best to promote the future of Kiri. If the civilian thinks he can threaten his best, then it's time to pay him a brief visit. He challenged Lear and Reika Kagaya, the beautiful celestial, but equally mortal leader of the Kagaya clan. She had long silver hair and white pearl-colored eyes, equally fascinating. His skin was brighter than moonlight, and his chakra was darker and fiercer than most people in the room. When his mischievous eyes landed on Naruto, he felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up in alarm. Now that we have as much fine new shinobi as our famous swordsmen, I say we put their skills to good use, he suggested with a smile, earning quick nods from the leader of the Goromo clan. His smile disappeared as a cold aura descended over the meeting room. Its weight was more than that of several mountains combined, and it smelled like the aroma of death itself. If he focused hard, he could actually hear the painful scream of hundreds moaning all around him. His gaze connected with the man who had unleashed this power, just like everyone else was looking at him. If you think it's so easy to raise your hand against our own compatriots, then maybe I should extend this courtesy to a few elected people first, Naruto warned, his voice as cold as ice. Oh, you've got some balls. And here I thought you were just a pretty face, Reika joked. Naruto placed his hand on the hilt of his sword and tilted it slightly outward, unleashing a supernatural scream that terrified each and every person in the room. It got to a point where the Mizukage gave him a sharp glow that made him rewrap his sword to everyone else's relief. No one is going to raise any weapons against his comrades anymore. Those who do will be executed immediately, Genjutsu throne, looking directly at the Kagaya matriarch. Of course, Lord 2. We just wish to support their rule and avoid any unnecessary interference from the daimyo, Reika soothed, receiving a suspicious glare from the cage. Naruto didn't miss how tense some members of the Ozuki clan were, and the same happened with some Kagaya and Agoromo clans in the room. Mr. Second, let's discuss how we can make Iwagakure pay for his crimes, suggested Lord Yamato Yuki, the leader of the Yuki clan and the father of Aku, who was now one of the newest members of the 7 Great Swordsmen. Genjutsu nodded his head at the request, looking quite grateful as he gestured to the Ambu commander, who took a step forward, while 2 other Andu lowered the ninja world map in the center of the room for everyone to see. The fact that it was transparent made it possible for every person to see every detail, regardless of their position in the room. At the beginning of this war, Kirigakure was about 30, and the same number of civilian fighters of the daimyo. Now that count has been reduced to 25,000 shinobi and approximately 20,000 civilian fighters. Genjutsu had the grace to grimace as he remembered his failed expedition against Iwagakure again. That cost him not only members of the 7 ninja swordsmen, but almost 3,000 shinobi killed, and another 2,000 in various states of injuries. The daimyo had rushed in several regiments of his personal guard when the news reached him. But unfortunately, the entire fleet never reached the shores of Iwagakure, and instead was wiped out by violent sea storms. And they did not even take into account the financial and logistical cost of these failures, or the effect it had on the morale of their forces. All in all, Kirigakure was in a mess of his own making, or specifically because of his cage's hasty decisions. Genjutsu listened as quite a few of his officers suggested launching a naval invasion using his entire fleet of ships. Only this time, the civilian fighters wouldn't drown during storms, as they would have shinobi protecting them from the elements. The plan is too risky. In addition, we have thought about supplying our troops once they land on the shores of Iowa. The whole trip would take 6 weeks minimum. If our troops are in danger of any kind, it will be too late when help reaches them. Mr. 2, the Karatachi clan cannot, in good conscience, allowing our shinobi to die senseless deaths, object Yagura Karatachi, the new and young leader of the small but dangerous Karatachi clan. Naruto was surprised when the same 14-year-old boy gave him a respectful wink and even a slight smile. for standing against the dangerous suggestion of the Kagaya leader. I agree with Lord Yagura. We should think of an alternative plan where we have the opportunity to reach our troops as quickly as possible under any circumstances, said Lord Minas Tarumi, the leader of the famous Kekai Henkai warriors, who could manipulate three elements to create something else dangerous. The Ambu Black Ops also agree with your decision, my lords. What should we do, Lord Secondo? He asked Commander Ambu devoutly, while looking at his cage. Naruto tensed up when he saw his now masked wife, dressed in her outfit of a ninja terrace, make a little cough, getting everyone's attention. He received a brief nod from his superior, and a similar one from Genhetsu. That made Ino step in the middle of the room, near the ninja map. There's another way, he suggested, by gauging everyone's reaction. While the heads of the Ozuki, Yuki, Karatachi, and Tarumi clans seemed open to suggestions, Commander Ambu and the Kagaya clan leader didn't seem happy for various reasons. One hated the body of hunters, while the other hated an ordinary born who received such an opportunity to speak among his betters. Genhetsu picked up a report placed on his desk by a ninja hunter, even as he saw the other leaders do the same. When they were given similar reports of their own. Our intel suggests that an invasion by sea is not possible, nor is it possible from the air. Given our lack of technological advancement in that area, that leaves us with a ground invasion, Ino suggested. The only way for such an invasion to happen is for our forces to pass through Kumogakure and reach Iwagakure. However, we do not have a pact granting military access with Kumo, nor are we its allies. This would be an act of war against a very powerful nation. Is this what the Hunter Corps is favoring now? He asked Genhetsu sharply, not looking at Ino, but at his superior who was getting worried. When a small portion of Killer Laura from his cage landed on him. Do you like it or not? But this is the only option we have, Lord Secondo. Kumogakure has formed a military alliance with Iwakuri. If we attack the stone again, then we are obliged to confront Kumoshinobi by coming to their aid. In which case the Hunter Corps believes in hitting them first and eliminating them before bringing our nation's power over. Stone, Hino explained. And how do you plan to make that happen? Questioned Manhetsu calmly. Our shinobi has fared badly in the mountainous regions of Kumo in the last war, another minor lord protested. We don't have any base of operations nearby that can supply our troops when they start invading the entire coastline of the Land of Lightning. It's not feasible, warned Aku, winning. A surprising nod from Amayuri Ringo of all people. We'll just have to cut them off, I guess, Kisum said, earning a dark smile from Zabuza, and a similar smile from Jinpachi Munasi. Genjetsu had seen and heard all the arguments, only then did his gaze land on one of the few that he had not yet spoken. What do you think, Mr. Seventh? He asked Genjetsu in a funny way, enjoying the surprised reaction he got from Naruto in his new title and earning a severe glare. In exchange for the Kagaya leader. Now that he was put in the spotlight, he had no chance but to express his opinion, which was what he had been patiently waiting for. As he walked towards the map, he gave a hidden smile to his wife, who bowed, and allowed him the space as they had planned to do. If we want to win this war, we will need allies. Any ally of Iwagakure is ours. Enemy, am I right, Mr. Second? He asked Naruto seriously, earning himself a firm nod from Genhetsu. So, that greatly limits our choices. Since only two notable powers are currently engaged in open conflict with our enemies and their comrades, he suggested. Naruto. In an instant, Reika Kagaya was on her feet, and the bloodlust in her eyes made Naruto tense up. Do you want to ally us with Konoha and her lapdogs, the ginger bastards? She screamed furiously. We spit on the hugging of trees and their pacifist ways. They deserve to be eliminated, and they are not even worthy of any help from us, agreed Loriro Agoromo. And he did not clench his jaw at that outburst and the blatant insult hurled at his people. Her husband, on the other hand, was as calm as still water, and looked at the two heads of the clan before looking at the Mizukage. Mr. Segundo, Tierra del Fuego has a lot to offer us. They have money, minerals, and rich lands. It is the perfect time to ally with them when they currently need help. Like it or not, Konoha and Ufusogakure are strong enough to take on three great nations and their supporters on their own. We need allies like them if we want to win this war. I'm not asking them to like it, but if it saves the lives of our people, Then we should put aside our pride, Naruto fiercely argued. The wounds of the last war haven't healed yet, Naruto. Moreover, our nation does not have a reliable reputation in the world. If we approach them for an alliance, we look weak, and they gain even the slightest advantage in negotiations. Which is something that I do not allow. I understand and even agree with your suggestion that allying with them is in our interest. But I will? Don't let Kiri look weak, Genjutsu decided. Naruto was quite impressed with the Mizukage again. When he saw how that decision instantly caused the Harker Kagaya and Agoromo clans to back down, while the other more liberal clans pondered over it. So, what do you suggest we do, Lord Secondo? All the facts along with their pros and cons are before you. My sword is yours to command, Naruto promised. Genjutsu got up from his chair, making everyone else do the same, but the Mizukage didn't say anything as he approached Naruto and the map. His veteran gaze stared at him for several long moments before landing on his swordsman. Let's show the world the power that Kirigakure has. It will strike fear into the hearts of our enemies and hope into the minds of potential allies. We will attack Kumogakure with all our power and desires. We will destroy by allying with Iwagakure. If the Land of Fire and its allies see sense, then they can approach us requesting an alliance, and we can consider, Genjutsu stated, earning predatory smiles from the Kagaya and Agoromo leaders, while the others, gentlemen and commanders, bowed their heads. Head on his mission. Naruto admitted that knowing that the Mizukage had made a decision, and trying to make him change his decision in public, would only draw unwanted attention to him. I've made my decision. Now tell me where we can launch an attack that will make sure my message is delivered to the world. He asked Genjutsu seriously, his gaze looking specifically at Naruto. Without hesitation, Naruto placed his finger on Osaka, which was a wealthy and important coastal city in the Land of Lightning. More importantly, it was the headquarters of the Kinkaku Black Ops Forces and an entire shinobi special operations regiment. Genjutsu gave a predatory smile as he placed his hand on Naruto's shoulders. Show them what it feels like to lose what they love. And she did not find herself standing in a very dangerous place. Heavy rains were falling from the skies, drenching the blood-stained ground and the corpses that were draped over it. It was a story of devastation and pain. He saw shinobi in Kumogakure uniforms and Yuzu's dead ones as far as he could see. Giant craters, scorched earth, destroyed sections of forest, dry lakes, and broken weapons greeted her at every turn. In the far distance, there were huge towers of fire erupting from all over the earth. It was hell. However, the battle was not over. It was then that he felt that familiar and scary aura once again. Even though her instincts were telling her to run away, her legs pulled her in the direction of that power. Her heart threatened to explode as the presence grew even louder and the screams of 1,000 souls reached her. Very soon, he came across a cliff on the mountainside and took up position on its edge as he glimpsed the ongoing battle. His eyes widened as he saw thousands of Kumogakure shinobi standing on one side, led by none other than the Gold and Silver Brothers, united. To them in the fight was the elite unit Kinkaku Blackos. Judging by their large numbers, the entire battalion was present and participated in the battle. His eyes widened in horror as he saw 3 or 4 dozen young teenagers and even children with the familiar red hair of the Uzumaki clan. And doing death. On the battlefield. Everyone was dressed in ambo gear, and many still had masks on their faces, even in death. It was then that he saw a lonely boy in the same uniform, and a wolf mask cradling a young ambo with bright red hair in his arms. Judging by the child's lack of movement and his unpleasant hole in the chest, he was dead. Hino felt something in his chest tighten when he saw Yuzu's lonely boy who had blonde hair in return to his younger friend. But dead in a bear hug. Tears of blood began to fall from the eyes of the blonde ambu and gave birth to a feeling so powerful that it reached Hino's own heart. I hate. He hurried downhill without considering the danger he was putting himself in as that familiar haunting feeling in his heart grew stronger. However, she was forced to stop when Private Yuzu left his comrade and looked up at the enemy who outnumbered and surrounded him. That's when he saw those red, disturbing eyes. Sharingan. No, he thought that for those eyes he lacked Tamo, or the patron of the famous Dojutsu of the Uchiha clan. What made her doubt that conviction was the fact that the chakra she felt of the child felt familiar to that of an Uchiha. You could barely feel it, but that didn't change the fact that it was there. And those eyes. However, there was another presence. One stronger than the Uchiha chakra he had felt before, curled around the boy like a shroud and threatened to burn anyone who came near him. Dark black ash began to escape from the boy's entire body as the enemy army in front of him charged once more with a thunderous roar. With a deafening and monstrous roar of his own, the last shinobi Yuzu charged forward to meet his enemies head-on. She was about to scream at him, to warn him to give up and run away, but suddenly she lost her senses. When the world around her began to disappear instantly. "You shouldn't be here." That voice was one he knew very well, and when his eyes opened again in an instant, that's when she saw herself lying in her room on her bed. She looked sideways and saw Naruto looking at her intently. He did not look pleased. And she didn't flinch when she saw that they had wrapped themselves around each other quite intimately. And one of their arms was wrapped tightly around her chest, with her fingers resting on her heart. She realized her mistake. "Never do that again, and no," she said calmly. But her disappointment and underlying anger were not missed by her as she ducked her head in shame. "It happened by mistake. I'm really sorry about that, and I won't let it happen again," he promised. Sincerely, he looked at her for a few long moments, measuring the value of his promise before releasing a tired sigh, and placed his hand over her face. "It was my fault too, I guess. I underestimated the limits of his mental walking ability. Next time I'll take the proper steps to make sure of this not happening," he said out loud. She could do nothing but nod her head in agreement, as he had unknowingly invaded her memories. As they were both sound asleep, their senses were extremely off, and their proximity allowed their powers to interact each other. It wouldn't have been so horrible if they had been real husband and wife, but in truth, they were operatives serving different nations with their own secrets. And she had just seen one of her own. Was it true or a dream? "The things I saw," she whispered. Her fear hadn't abated yet, and that it was something not to be missed. And yet he chose to remain silent, neither confirming nor denying her question. Instead, he gently disentangled himself from her and made his way to the edge of the bed. He helped himself to a bottle of water lying on the table next to his side of the bed, and silence ensued in his room. Once he finished drinking his filling, he looked over at her and gave her a much-needed reassuring smile. "It's okay," he said. She remained silent but peaceful when she got up from her bed and walked bare-breasted to her closet. A small smile came over her lips as she thought about how they were strangers to each other in many ways with their secrets, and yet they were both kind to each other, considerate of how the other was feeling. She could easily pretend to show such emotions to other people, while she was trained to do so, but with Naruto, those same feelings came naturally to her. She didn't have to pretend, and she could be herself with him, even if there was a huge chasm between them. They could both understand each other. She cared about him, and in her own way, he cared about her too. Or that was what she believed herself, for the other possibility seemed too hard and cold. She herself got out of her bed, allowing her long, free blonde hair to float in the gentle breeze of the silent night. He was wearing one of his t-shirts, and even his shorts that he liked, and an action that always amused him. Even now he smiled to see her smile. His gaze saw the clock, and that evaporated all his happy feelings. "You're going to do it, aren't you?" she asked in a resigned voice, making him look at her. "The orders have already been delivered by Mizukage himself. You know I have no choice, besides I've wanted to do this for a long time," he confessed, as she walked up to him and placed her hand on his. "It's because of your past?" she asked. He simply nodded, confirming her suspicions, but she decided not to push him further on this topic. If the memory she had unknowingly seen was a proof, it's true that the Mizukage asked you and the other swordsmen to attack Osaka City by yourself. He wants to restore the fear and respect that his group enjoys throughout the shinobi world, but he had still offered everyone the option to bring Kiri's best fighters into battle with you if necessary. He knew that most of the others in his group had rejected the offer for reasons own, but because he even refused to offer me the opportunity to fight by his side when I had specifically told you earlier. He asked, some anger and frustration seeping into his usually calm voice. She became even more agitated when he did not answer her question, and instead went to take a bath. However, she did not let him go and stubbornly waited until he returned. Still, he remained silent despite her attempts to make him respond. He remained silent until the very moment he adjusted the noe that the Mizukage gave him and his sword on his hip. "Why, Naruto?" she asked more insistently. She, along with an entire battalion of hunters, Ambu and Hounen ninjas, along with Chunin, were to remain as backup near the coastal fortress and only intervene if the 7 great swordsmen were in serious trouble. It frustrated her and now even terrified her, as she had seen a glimpse of her history. "With Kinkaku and Kumogakure unity in general, I and the others can fight alongside you. It will make our attack faster and more effective. Why don't you consider it? If you are the one who guarantees that we will help him in the battle, then the Mizukage will not refuse," he begged, making him stop when it is. I was just about to get to the door. He looked back at her, and even though his face was hidden behind his mask, she knew he was smiling. "You were always the optimist between the two. However, the world needs more people like you," he praised. "Why is that?" she asked again, refusing. He has been blinded by his praise. He blinked, and for a moment saw them all once more, only for them all to disappear when he opened his eyes. She didn't miss the way his fist clenched slightly, and the way his shoulders slumped a little for a moment, before he composed himself and looked at her. This time he was smiling completely, but she could see the pain in his eyes very clearly. "My dream died, but your dream is still alive, and no." He froze and felt a lump growing in his throat, even as tears began to come to his eyes as he remembered his village, and his own desire to return there. Someday. He knew her wish and was doing everything in his power to make sure she lived to see that dream come true. "I want you to be a part of that dream too," she said softly, making him smile wistfully. He placed the Tanto version of his sword on his back, and he turned to walk towards her. When he approached her, he lowered the mask and bent down to place a soft kiss on her lips. And she didn't feel herself melting in his embrace, and she kissed him fiercely, wishing he would join her dream, because deep down, he was a good man, no matter how much he pretended to be otherwise. The moment ended too soon for her when she broke the kiss and lifted her face mask instead. "Thank you." With those words, he disappeared from his house in a whirlpool of ashes. Genjutsu noticed the determined expressions in the eyes of his 7 great swordsmen. Armed to the teeth, they were ready to conquer the world in Kiri's colors. Part of him felt extremely proud to see his own son among these great men and women. But there was another one who had recently caught Mizukage's attention. A good shinobi with whom I could trust Kiri's future. The Mizukage looked down from his tower to see the 501st Battalion ready and waiting for his orders. Composed of the best Hounen, Chunin, Ambu, and a ninja terrace from Kiri. It was the most elitist unit they could throw against their enemies. In the next mission, he intended for them to act as support, while the 7 ninja swordsmen stormed the front. Now, it was time for him to choose the one to lead this mission. "Do any of you have any ideas you want to suggest?" he asked Genhetsu seriously. "None, Mr. Second. We will follow the orders," Aku replied obediently, earning a nod from Amayuri Ringo as well. Unknown to them, his response had only disappointed their supreme leader, who wouldn't let his personal feelings be visible. "Well, it's time to get our hands dirty," Kisum said with a shark smile. "The linging puppies will soon try my sword." Zabuza agreed. "Mine too," Jinpachi whispered threateningly. Genhetsu closed his eyes and tried to stop his disappointment. It was true that Kiri had many fine shinobi who had truly excelled as individual warriors. But there were very few who had it in them to lead others. People who could look at the big picture, care about more than their own desires. "Mr. Second, I propose that the 501st fight next to us. Having them acting as a support is good, but their potential will be wasted if we keep them away from such a crucial battle. Besides, even the 7 of us, no matter how strong, we should not try to endure all alone. We are going to strike fear into the hearts of our enemies, but we should not alienate our comrades," Manhepsu explained, making Amayuriyaku hesitations. Genhetsu smiled, and was once again filled with pride at his son's thoughtfulness, but still remained silent. Manhetsu's heart was in the right place, and he had the potential to be a great leader of his nation, but he had lost a key factor. Naruto had listened to the suggestion provided by Kai's son, and it reminded him of Hino's own desire to fight alongside him. But it also brought back painful memories that I wanted to forget. He had believed in people other than himself once. He could do it again knowing what had happened when he had made the same decision in the past. However, when he thought about the alternative, there were not many options. The 7 ninja swordsmen were a dangerous force, but none of them, except Naruto himself, had faced the Kinkaku and their allies. Only he knew what horrors that unit was capable of. If someone from his group, or if most of them died, then the 501st would not be prepared to face the Kinkaku battalion and an entire Kumogakure Special Forces regiment. He looked at the hundreds of ninjas gathered under the tower. Many of them were so young and didn't deserve to suffer the fate that the people Naruto himself had once worried about faced. The decision was made. Mr. Second, I agree with Manhetsu. Even so, I still propose that the 7 of us lead and fight the enemy at the beginning. Our enemy are the best black ops of Kinkaku and Kumo. It is imperative that we, who are strong, fight against them first, and let's collect as much information as we can and do maximum damage. By collecting such information, we can instruct our troops about the enemy's strengths and weaknesses. This way, when they go into battle, they are fully prepared and suffer minimal casualties, Naruto sincerely requested. Today, and why on earth should we go to all that effort? They are not children, but shinobi? He barked at Mayuri in protest. They'll get in our way even if we tell them. Zabuza whistled, gaining assent from Kisame and Jinpachi. Naruto-san, time is of the essence. We can't fight the Kinkaku battalion and the entire Special Operations Forces regiment while taking care of our own comrades. At this rate, our mission may not be very effective. I suggest we go ahead with the Manhetsu idea. The 501st is made up of our best shinobi. They will know what to do, Aku suggested. Genjutsu saw how his son looked directly at Naruto. Are you afraid that we will lose people? But that's part of being a shinobi, Manhetsu said calmly, but was surprised when Naruto shook his head. I know. However, we are the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. We are Kiri's sword against her enemies, but we are also her shield. We need as many men as we can in this war. Above all, we need to rebuild the confidence of our troops again in leadership. If it's too much trouble for you to instruct our men, then allow me to do that task, Naruto requested. Before anyone else could speak, Genjutsu cleared his throat, getting their attention. I've heard what you all had to say. Now listen to my decision. Naruto blinked when the Mizukage looked directly at him without any doubt or hesitation in his gaze. Naruto, I'm calling you commander of this mission with Magetsu as your second in command, Genjutsu stated, to the surprise of everyone, including Naruto himself, who had never thought that the Mizukage would choose him to lead his own son. By the looks of it, Manhetsu didn't look too pleased either if his clenched fist was a test. Why not your own son, Lord Secondo? He asked Mayuri with a frown. Our warriors will follow Manhetsu. He's a proven fighter, he argued acutely. Not that we care, but because the newbie, Mr. Second, asked Kisame curiously. Even Naruto, who had remained silent, was curious to know what led the older man to make such a decision. Naruto is an approved battle commander. At Ambu, he has led several missions against Kumogakure shinobi. He knows how they fight and operate. He is a strong warrior, but above all he understands what lead means. A commander is not only responsible for the success of the mission, but also responsible for the safety of the troops under him. If you directly pit our troops against enemies like the Kinkaku and their allies, many will die an unnecessary death. When it can be avoided, using the idea of Naruto. You all have your own thinking, but this mission is not just about you. It's about Kirigakure and its future. He explained to Genhetsu fiercely as he turned to the former Ambu official. I'll leave them all to you. Naruto completely knelt down before the Mizukage, before looking at it with nothing but pure determination. I will take care of them, Mr. Second, the 7th promised. Genjutsu nodded and looked at the others gathered before him. To his great relief, they all bowed their heads at his decision one after another. Another one. I doubted that they would make Naruto's task easier, considering that each of them was very powerful and had their own agenda. If this is good for our people, then I will follow you. Naruto reluctantly promised Manhetsu. Genhetsu couldn't hide his smile this time when he saw Naruto give a respectful nod to the youngest child. The proud father gave his son a nod of recognition, earning a thin smile from the boy. He brings glory to our nation. Mahetsu jumped through the forest trees at a fast pace to catch up with the man he was supposed to follow on this mission. Behind him, he obediently saw the remaining members of his group and the entire 501st. Most of his warriors were excited for a much-needed action, but Mahetsu was not at peace because deep down, he felt that something was not right. The mission, as simple as it was, had many hidden aspects. Those who were somewhat known to their commander. What do you know about them? He asked the heir Ozuki when he joined his commander. Which makes you think I know something about our enemy? He replied to Naruto calmly, earning a narrow look from the black-eyed boy. You wouldn't have fought so hard to get your strategy accepted, unless you knew something that I and the others didn't know. I don't know much about you, but the Zambu trust you. You faced the Kinkaku before, right? He asked Mahetsu seriously. He waited for an answer and saw Naruto calmly looking straight ahead as they both jumped through the trees, at a pace that was impossible for most ninjas to match. Once he confirmed, then it was right of my father to choose you to lead this mission. Naruto couldn't hide his surprise upon hearing the younger boy's honest comment. The fact that he was smiling and there was no hidden sick emotion in his heart was a stark contrast to his previous behavior. Magetsu must have sensed her thoughts as she shrugged her shoulders. I won't lie, I wanted to lead this mission. But if you really know how to fight our enemy, with minimal losses to our own forces, then I will believe in you as my father has. I just don't want any more of our people to die in vain, Manhetsu admitted. He didn't miss the fleeting painful look that crossed Naruto's eyes before he studied his features once more. What is it? He asked Manhetsu hesitantly. You just reminded me of someone I once knew. Before Manhetsu could question him further, they soon cleared the edge of the forest and found themselves standing in front of the vast sea that separated the land from the water of the land from the lightning. Their remaining comrades soon joined them in a few minutes. And Mangetsu decided to address them when Naruto gave a thumbs up. To reduce the time, we will all travel by foot across the sea. Get some rest, get your strength and energy back, because once we start our race, there is no stopping or reversing. Instructed Mangetsu. Don't you think it's a little more dangerous for some of our younger subordinates? I might kill them before they even see the enemy shores, Kisame warned with a smile, as he looked at a handful of Chunin who grimaced. There is no other choice. With our old fleet destroyed, and a new one in the process of construction, we have no choice but to cross the ocean on foot to reach enemy territory, Zabuza argued. It shouldn't be too difficult for most members of our force, but for some it can be lethal. In that case, the strong will have to put up with the weak, Aku advised. Gaining a sigh from Amiri. Trouble, the red-haired female sword master muttered to me. Arguments and suggestions were bursting out in full force with every member, whether senior or junior, interested in expressing their opinions. And he didn't see Naruto close his eyes before releasing a small amount of intention of killing that made everyone stop. The 501st and the other swordsmen were instantly put on alert when everyone felt the increase in power in their surroundings. To everyone's surprise, a huge wall of water rose from the sea. It spread along the entire coast in length and was almost 30 feet high. The most surprising thing is that it was stable. Magetsu couldn't hide his smile when he saw Naruto standing on top of that wave with both fingers raised. He over-instructed the blonde-haired commander, and he was not speechless even when his entire force cheered enthusiastically. All around him, his comrades charged forward to take up positions on that wall of water. Instead of running across the ocean, all they had to do now was stand steady on that wave as it carried them through. Of course, such a journey would involve extreme control and caution to be invoked by the creator of this jutsu. Judging by Naruto's lack of visible pain or stress, it was really surprising not only for her, but also for Aku, who was looking at his commander in a new light. Even among Kira shinobi, such mastery over water is found among only a handful of shinobi. The Mizukage is one of those fighters, but Naruto, being a Yuzu operative, makes him less able to wield such power. His strength lies in fire and wind, which is prominent among most Uzumaki warriors. He is also not a Kiri warrior who has a natural talent with water element. Come on, Hunter. And she was not taken out of her thoughts when Aku called her, realizing that they were the last ones left to join both ladies. They nodded to each other before rushing to join their remaining comrades who had now taken positions on that giant wave. When everyone was in position, Naruto's voice boomed out in full force, maintaining balance with water at all costs. Leave the rest to me. He was about to summon a large amount of his chakra when he felt two hands being placed on his shoulders, two on his back, and two blades touching his legs. Looking back, he saw that it was Manhatsu and Aku who had put their hands on his shoulders. Amayuri and Jinpachi had their hands placed on his back, and Zabuza along with Kisame had placed their swords on his legs. I can't let you steal all the glitter, Zabuza said with a smile. Even behind that mask, Mahetsu caught a small smile that came to Naruto's lips as the remaining swordsmen channeled their chakra into their commander, who then joined their hands. The entire 501st was overjoyed when the giant wave burst forward, crossing the ocean at breathtaking speeds, and bringing them closer and closer to their inevitable fight. 2 days later, the 7 ninja swordsmen and the top officers of the 501st had decided to camp on a remote island barely 50 miles off the coast of Osaka City. Only an hour's march away was the enemy city defended by thousands of ninja special forces. It was one of Kumogakure's strengths, one that many believed to be unconquerable. We have almost 800 fighters in our ranks, not including the 7, said one of the Ambu officers, who was in charge of a large contingent of troops. The enemy has 3 or 4 times those numbers, and we include the Kinkaku battalion. We are at a huge disadvantage, not only in strength, but also in knowing the terrain. This will be a difficult battle, commented Ao, the senior officer of the entire 501st. Naruto looked at the man who was expertly covering the Yakugan behind a simple eye patch. Even now, the same officer was quietly trying to measure his power with the hidden eye. What's your plan, Commander? He asked Kisame, amused. Before telling us about your strategy, I would like to introduce someone, Ao said honestly. Before anyone could say anything, another ninja entered inside the store. Naruto's eyes widened slightly as he felt the underlying sea of the dark chakra inside the woman who was now in front of him. She was a beauty, he would give her that, and many other men in the room, including Manhatsu and Jinpachi, blushed. But there were others who were as cautious as Naruto because they had felt his dark hidden power. The kunoichi had long and beautiful brown hair and an attractive figure that stuck very well in his blue dress. Her green eyes were full of mischief, but deep down there lurked an edge in them. There was a traditional katana on his back, his skin was extremely fair, and his chakra was spinning around his body playfully. Her gaze connected directly with the commander's blue eyes as she gave him a slight bow. I am Mei Tarumi, heiress of the Tarumi clan, and Hinchiriki of the 6 Tails. Naruto didn't get lost as everyone in the room had tensed up when Midorumi finished her presentation. It was a natural reaction to the presence of a Hinchiriki. But in those nervous looks, he also saw a lot of contempt and even hatred for a woman who was supposed to be his comrade. Her eyes clearly showed that they saw her as a weapon or a creature of evil. Being born in a village without tailed beasts made him unable to understand these feelings. However, I could understand what it meant to be different from others. To have a power that made people fear you, he could understand it more. Very well, no matter what others say, you are a great shinobi to me. A faint smile came over his lips as he remembered the touching words of his little brother, who had believed in him, loved him, when everyone had surrendered to him. Perhaps it was those connected feelings and the link with Partido that made him walk towards Mei, who was now kneeling before him. Mei blinked in surprise when the commander himself knelt down at her level to everyone's surprise and offered her his hand. Call me Naruto. I hope we can work together, he said with a pleasant smile. Mei connected her own hand with his and couldn't help but feel the positive emotions surrounding this man. Everyone around him was nervous, angry, upset, and even scared, but not this man. In this raging sea of emotions around him, he was like a small but peaceful island where he could find shelter. Even if she didn't know him, a part of him wanted to trust him and follow him. Freed to meet you, she greeted him with a small smile as he helped her to stand on her own feet. She was disappointed when she broke off their contact and returned to her place in the center of the table. Mei couldn't help but see that he had composed himself so soon. Gone was that friendly smile that was now replaced by a calm, composed, and even cold look. As he looked at the map of Osaka City placed before him. Looks like Nidame thought one step ahead of all of us. That's the Mizukage, he praised Naruto honestly, as he gave Mei a little wink. How to proceed, Nanadame? He asked Mei with an amused smile. A small blush crept across Naruto's cheeks, which was fortunately hidden by his face mask. He didn't know how to respond to that cryptic comment or the not-so-innocent way Mei was looking at him. Fortunately, Hino was not present at this meeting, or it could have been quite embarrassing. Even few officers and most of the swordsmen smiled when he was mocked. A slight cough escaped his lips as he turned his attention back to the map. Our ultimate goal is the sheer destruction of this city and the annihilation of the military forces stationed here. However, that is a difficult task. Mei, how far can you control the powers of your Biju? He asked Naruto seriously. I can control up to 3 tails. Anything beyond that and I lose control, he admitted honestly. Some worry easily visible on her pretty face. We can't have that to make you stay close to me. I plan to use your help wherever our forces are massacred, and I will stay close to avoid. Let it get out of control, Naruto promised without hesitation. Can you do that? An out-of-control Hinshiriki is a walking disaster that doesn't discriminate between friends and enemies, am I warned? Directing a suspicious glance at the heir of the Tarumi clan, who looked at her coldly. Channel of your chakra, Mei. Mei hesitated before deciding to obey that order. He began to channel his chakra and was surprised when Naruto made a gesture to increase it. Complying, he almost started to summon a quarter of his power when he gasped and looked at his belly. A dull pain flashed from inside his body, and his eyes widened in shock as the dark marks began to spread all over his body. Fuinjutsu? She along with everyone else looked at Naruto surprised, who had now joined his hands on the ram seal. That handshake. Whispered Manhatsu in realization. Zabuza and Jinpachi narrowed their eyes at their commander, now being able to see him in a completely different light. Maybe the Mizukage had seen something that none of them could. You marked it the moment you touched it. You are fast, Lord Seventh, he praised Kisum sincerely. Mei was doing her best to shake off the control that was brutally repressing her chakra. She cursed herself for underestimating Naruto. His father had warned him to be careful by warning him that he was an accomplished Ambu officer. Now she knew why. Through the seal, he could feel his chakra invading his body and clearly crushing his own power. This was not the power of any ordinary ninja or someone from a civilian family. Even among the shinobi families, only a handful of ninja clans had mastered the art of controlling Hinshiriki and their tailed beasts. In any case, he decided to never let his guard down around Naruto. Fortunately, he stopped suppressing his power the moment he stopped gathering his chakra. A small drop of sweat rolled down her forehead, and she gritted her teeth in frustration as she saw Naruto staring unfazed. As he focused on the map as if nothing had happened. Such was their difference in strength, even if she had the power of 6 tiles within her. Naruto studied the terrain carefully, as did the other officers around him. Osaka was a coastal city that had a medium-sized port where merchant ships and military transports regularly docked. On its east and west sides, it was surrounded by large mountains, while its northern border had a vast open prairie, where any movement could be seen from miles away. For groups of 200 each, Naruto declared, drawing the attention of everyone present. The first group formed by purely Ambu Black Ops and a TED ninjas. They will be the vanguard force that will fight against most of the enemy forces under the command of the 7 great swordsmen. The second group composed of elite Hounen, preferably fighters well versed in the style of lightning and earth. This force will be divided into two halves, with each climb over these mountains on the eastern and western flanks surrounding the city. When I give the signal, they're going to launch aerial bombardments all over the city. The third group, formed by the expert Hounen. Your task will be to loot as many valuables. Whether it's money, resources, food stories, weapons and information. In addition to these tasks, they must also establish escape routes from which our forces can retreat if they become trapped. Pao, I want you to command this task force. The fourth group will be formed by Chunin Dirigent, by the newly appointed Jounin. They will be the reserve force that will protect our rear guard against any enemy counterattack. When he had finished explaining his plan, he looked up to see if there were any objections, and was pleased when there were none. If they had, they kept it well hidden. It was not the ordinary shinobi he was worried about, but his own group from which he expected a lot of resistance. Do we have any strategy to involve the Kinkaku? He asked Zabuza seriously. Only the 7 of us will get them involved. Under no circumstances do I want our shinobi to make contact with them. Pao, as the senior officer of the 501st, I want to make this very clear to you. If anyone besides Mei and the 7 swordsmen make contact with them, they are as good as dead, Naruto warned, much to Ambu's surprise. Surely, you are exaggerating a little, Lord 7th, I whisper hesitantly. I've faced them before, and barely survived that encounter, Naruto confessed, as he pulled down a part of his Hounen vest, where a nasty, deep-edged scar extended all the way across his upper chest. What are they? Aku asked hesitantly. Masters of the ninja arts, but more dangerously. Mind, they are a force of warriors who are able to control the Viju chakra, just like the Gold and Silver brothers. When Konoha sold the tailed beasts to various nations at the beginning of the Hidden Village era, Kumogakure was not satisfied. They believed it was too risky to grant such enormous power in the hands of a single individual who could be killed, captured, turned rogue, or just be a disappointment. So they started a program where their most elite ninjas could also learn to control the power of the tailed beast to some extent. The Gold and Silver brothers, who have the Kyugi chakra in them, had the task of training this force. Naturally, there were a lot of casualties, but Kumogakure never cared about the price, but the final power he would grant to his village. After a decade of experiments, they successfully raised an entire company of shinobi capable of using such power. That force is known as Dikinkaku, Naruto explained in detail. He looked across the room, hoping that these people would take his words seriously or risk paying the ultimate price. Fortunately, most of them, including the 7 swordsmen, were considering his words quite a bit. Quite seriously. If what you say is true, then we can't let our forces fight them, Manhepsu agreed. Still, the battles are truly unpredictable. If some of them manage to slip past us and head straight towards our forces, Aku warned. Then everyone will be, he warned Mayuri, but he was stopped when Naruto slammed his fist on the table. Ao along with the other common officers came directly face to face with determined blue eyes as they stared at their own souls. As your commander, I will protect each and every one of you with my life. I will not let my comrades die at his hands, Naruto promised fiercely, hoping they would believe in him. Not again. The Mizukage put our lives in your hands, Mr. 7th. I may not know you personally, but your eyes reflect your desire to protect the men under your command. I can respect that, and so we will all believe in you, Ao promised with a small smile, much to Naruto's relief, who gave a nod of recognition. They continued discussing the details of their plans for another hour before retiring to their rooms to rest and prepare. For his fateful battle, Naruto stood in front of the 501st alongside the other swordsmen. The skies had darkened when the dark clouds had hidden the moon behind them, but even in the darkness, he could see the faces of the men and women in front of him. Soon, everyone would venture into their toughest battle. Many would not come back alive, many would never be the same again. This battle would change them, for better or for worse, only time would tell. As their leader, it was his responsibility to prepare them for the obstacle in front of them. We are ready, Lord 7th, O informed confidently. Since the 800 warriors were attentive, I don't have much to say. I wish I knew each of you personally and the opposite too. Maybe after this battle, we can all have a few drinks together and have a blast of our victory, Naruto said with a small smile, earning brief laughs from quite a few of the Kiri shinobi. However, there were many others who, although silent, seemed far from comfortable. "Sir, please take some of us with you. We are expendable. The 7 ninja swordsmen are not," one of the Chunin argued, who looked like she was barely 15 years old. "No, you're not," Naruto answered frankly, a harsh tone creeping into his voice as he looked at the men around him. "Never think like that. You are loyal soldiers of Kiri, the best hope of our people. I hope you will have faith in me and my plan, while I will also have faith in each and every one of you. Take care of each other in battle, follow your training, give your best, but most of all, never lose faith in yourself or the cause you are fighting for, no matter the odds. As your commander, I will clear you the way. And know this, dead or alive, I will bring you home. That's my promise to each and every one of you," Naruto said sincerely. "So I will," Magetsu promised with a smile. "Me too," Aku said sincerely. "Guess what? We'll do all the heavy lifting for the puppies. Don't get into too much trouble," she smiled at Mayuri with a wild smile. "Leave the heavy lifting to us and these big guys," Zabuza said with a smile, as he pointed to his huge sword. "Maybe he did the same to me," while Impachi just gave a sly smile. Naruto's gaze connected with Ino for a moment, as both of them fleetingly nodded to each other. When he turned to join his fellow swordsmen, Naruto saw Mei and many of the Kiri shinobi, looking at him with much less skepticism than before. Maybe he even saw respect in her eyes for him. "Pow, wait for my signal," Naruto ordered, earning a wink from the older man. Magetsu had to pause when his partner stopped. The heir of the Ozuki clan and Naruto himself had joined, while the rest of them had also split up. Akuya Mayuri were a Team 1. Kisame, Zabuza, and Jinpachi were Team 2. While Naruto and Manhatsu were Team 3. Team 1 and 2 had been tasked with dealing with maximum damage throughout the city, bearing the brunt of enemy power. Team 3 were tasked with writing down the enemy's counterattack strategy, and ultimately finding holes that would help his troops to break the enemy. However, in order for that to open up, they needed to get into the city first. "What is it?" he asked Magetsu to his companion, who bent down and placed his palm on the surface of the sea. "There is a barrier ahead. A weak one, but something that will alert the enemy of our presence, and even before we set foot in the city," Naruto said seriously. "I can't see it or feel it. Can you turn it off?" He questioned Manhatsu, wondering if his new teammate's power in the sealing arts was as great as the Mizukage had said it was. To his surprise, Manhatsu felt a ready change in his surroundings when Naruto got up and looked at him. "It's done? Signal the others to move out," Naruto directed, earning a nod from Mangetsu. The younger swordsmen raised their fingers, and soon a thick fog began to form around them that slowly began to creep towards Osaka City. Naruto and his companion walked calmly through the fog, even as they both felt the presence of their fellow swordsmen, rushing towards the city at alarming speeds. As they advanced, Naruto sensed the presence of Kiri shinobi, taking up positions through the mountains surrounding Osaka, while his remaining companions followed the trail left by the 7 ninja swordsmen. They were advancing slowly, expecting to strike quickly once the signal was given. "How long before they know what's going on and I fight back?" he asked Mahetsu hesitantly. 3 minutes. Mahetsu blinked in shock at his partner's response. Part of his heart didn't want to believe that the enemy was so capable. But another part of him knew that Naruto had faced these warriors in the past and spoke from experience. It was better to have faith in him and follow his example. "I'll take care of that," Naruto assured, as he held up 2 of his fingers. Magetsu was fascinated when piles of ashes began to seep out of Naruto's entire body, and soon began to easily blend in with the thick fog. Within minutes, Magetsu could feel the power spreading rapidly block by block, until entire districts began to flood. Both swordsmen advanced further, until they quickly crossed the docks in a blur and took up positions on top of a warehouse rooftop that gave them a decent view of the sprawling city ahead of them. Mahetsu saw that Team 1 and Team 2 had also taken up positions and were waiting for his signal. Mahetsu winked when he saw the thick fog unleashed by the one that now covers half of the city. And in it was carefully hidden the ash that was being released and controlled by Naruto. Having already seen a small glimpse of the ancient Ambu's power, Mahetsu was truly wary of the atrocity that was about to be unleashed. The innocent will die, Magetsu warned, knowing that he was as responsible for the deaths today as his comrade beside him. To his surprise, there was no hesitation in Naruto's red eyes. What is he? Only then will Kumogakure know the true pain, Naruto said with a humorous disposition, as he clasped his hands together. In spite of everything, he felt them. Men, women and children, most of whom were sleeping peacefully in their beds. None of them had any idea of the calamity that surrounded them at that moment. I could feel his love, his dreams, his fears. I could feel everything. Just for a moment, it made him hesitate when his heart tried to look for another way. Until he remembered what these people had done to him, to his family, to his friends, to his comrades. Their blind ambition to acquire more and more power, to support those who threatened to plunge this world into endless war. To turn a blind eye to the pain they inflicted on other people who had never done anything to hurt them. Mahetsu tensed up as he felt even more and more ashes coming out of Naruto's body. To the point that now half of the city was enveloped in his power. So, are you ready to do this, Naruto? Those red eyes lacked mercy when Naruto extended his two arms towards the city. I will never forget my little brother's pain. Ash release. Explosion. Manhetsu's vision went blank. Southern District. One woke up in alarm as the ground trembled under his feet. He could already sense a huge disturbance in the city as he ran straight out of the wall of his house, only to be greeted by a scene of devastation. Almost half of the city had literally disappeared. Instead, all that was left was scorched earth, whose very soil had turned black with the ashes of all those who had perished in this tragedy. Not even the rubble of houses or buildings had survived. The air itself was burning, and that's when a presence nodded. It was one at first, that soon turned into two, then three, until there were 7 signatures he recognized, most of which were moving quickly around the devastated city. Another dark-skinned man dressed in Ambo gear appeared next to her instantly. The Ambu platoons are moving through various sectors, but so far we have no survivors. It's like everyone disappeared in that explosion. What is this, huh? The leader of Ambu asked him. Why didn't the Kinkaku feel anything disturbing? Where the hell are they? He shouted at me furiously. Most of them are accompanying their father, Laura and Cage, in the battle against the Yugas that started yesterday. The few remaining are currently guarding the prison. Ah, we can't afford to lose those prisoners. It would seem that this is Konoha's revenge for what we did to his Hokage. They launched a massive assault attracting our Reikage and the Kinkaku while an attack force arrived here, the Ambu leader suggested. I'll crush the bastards who did this, Ma shouted, as he channeled lightning bolts all over his muscular body. You will do no such thing. Guard the prison, and send as many Kinkaku to the front. Until then, the Ambu Black Ops will stop the enemy. Those are the standing orders that the Reikage gave us before he left, and I will do that. Don't allow yourself to disobey them, the masked demon leader of Ambu announced firmly. Unclenched his fist as a dirty chakra began to seep out of the leader's body. Leader of Ambu. His rough silver hair grew longer until it reached his waist, and the man himself began to transform into the fox, from which he had derived his power. Hinkaku, make them pay, he said bitterly as he disappeared. Sabuza smiled maniacally when he saw literally hundreds of Ambu jump from each and every corner of the burning city. Kiss him. Jinpachi. His 2 comrades laughed as Kisum pierced through a pair of hand seals while Jinpachi untied his own sword as the enemy forces closed in. Water style. Hello from water. Perhaps